Welcome to Make Your Own Fun. I am here with science fiction author Willow Grace, and the name of her book is Animus. Thank you so much for coming on the show. How the heck are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. Finally got over a little bit of sinus sick, as I'm sure all of us are probably dealing with the change of seasons.
Yes.
So I'm very ready to be healthier and talk about everything that has to do with writing today.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I guess I'll start with this one,
Mhm.
since a lot of people are kind of getting introduced to you for the first time, and I think you said the book isn't quite released yet. I don't know if there's any.
Not yet.
Is there are there any passages that they can find on your blog or anything like that that can kind of like give them a little snippet, or maybe if you want, you can
Yeah.
just kind of provide like a little brief summary so people can kind of get sucked into it.
Yeah. So essentially, I've got a few posts on my Instagram. I think I've got one that's pinned that kind of has a blurb about the entirety of the book. And then I have a few passages here and there attached to pictures that are little AI generated artwork from different scenes. But the best way for me to describe it, as my cat comes to join me and help me on this journey, is I like to describe it as fantastical science fiction. I feel like it blends aspects of both genres very nicely. It doesn't really lead to either one. But it's a fantastical science fiction novel that follows the journey of a female main character named Zaye as she is discovering not only who and what she is, but also what role she plays in an interuniversal war between creation and creator. That's
Very
the
cool.
nice nutshell tied up version.
I like it. I like it. So I guess Uh, what would you say were some inspirations for the story? So I'm sure maybe going back to when you were growing up and
Mhm.
just you were so immersed, I guess, in sci-fi fantasy stories,
Oh,
movies. So there had to be some things that you read or you watched when you were younger that you were like, "Hey, I could do this. I
oh,
really like this. This could be my
absolutely.
jam, you know?"
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So I definitely was a fantasy and science fiction nerd as a child. I would watch the science fiction and fantasy movies that my parents were into. But I also grew up in the Hunger Games, Divergent, and Avatar era, so to speak. So the strong female characters of Divergent and Hunger Games were things that I was inspired by, and I kind of wanted to continue that, so to speak. But also just the colorful, crazy science fiction world of Avatar and how it was, in a sense, similar to the species and such that we see here, but it has its own diversity. And I loved the idea of creating something that was so biological but so diverse and kind of outside of the box. So I sort of blended the ideas of creating this world, this new species, this entirely new culture, while still also having that really strong female character that many of us can find ourselves in.
Very cool. Okay. I like that. So the average person may not know this, and they really do need to know this, that novels take years and years sometimes to finish, especially if it's a series of novels or a collection of
Mhm.
short stories. So I guess just you can be as vague about this as you want, but how long would you say between writing like the first chapter or outline to the completed manuscript? Are we talking like several years, maybe?
So, for me specifically in this case with this first book, I I wrote the very first version that has ever existed of this novel between the ages of 13 and 14.
Like you do.
I think it was, sorry, my cats are knocking things off the table now. But anywho, um, I believe it was about 83,000 words. So it was a pretty decent
Wow.
sized
That's
novel
a
at the time.
chunk. That's a lot.
Yeah, it was a pretty good one. Um, and then I kind of let it sit for a while because when you're a kid, it's like, yay, I wrote this, but what do you
Then
do with
life
it after
happens. Other
that? Yeah,
things
life
come up,
happens essentially. So I went back to it in my early 20s, like 21, 22, and was like, this is really bad. Because I wrote it when I was a kid. I had, my
Oh
writing had
yeah, the cruel,
words.
harsh light of reality set in,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And I was like, the idea is there, the story is there, but the writing is not. So I decided to get back into it just for fun. I didn't know if I was going to do anything with it, but I figured why not? I might as well have a little bit of a hobby. And when I'm stressed, I like to write. And so about a few months later, because apparently I was very stressed, I had a finished first draft that actually could be going somewhere, so to speak. Even with that being said, there's so much editing that goes into it after you do your first draft. So this book, the one that's about to be coming out, is at least 2 to 3 years in the works as far as editing and revising goes to make it into what it is about to be to put in your hands. Now, it is the first book of a series, and I've polished my process a little bit with kind of figuring out how this first book goes. So my second one, I want to say first draft is probably going to take about 6 months to a year to be done. Final book is probably going to be another 2 to 3 years total to actually get the thing into everybody's hands. So roughly 2 years per
Yeah, I
book
mean
ish.
that's totally totally feasible, totally believable. So do you have like a close-knit circle of family and friends that are kind of like your I like to call it like the hey, does this suck meter where it's like you're passing it around going like, well, this makes sense to me, but am I spending like way too many pages, describing the action? Or am I just having like a Quentin Tarantino moment where it's like 5 pages of nothing but
Yeah.
dialogue?
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
and I
yes.
know that it's like, husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, this kind of stuff. That's great,
Mhm.
but it's like you do need that fresh set of
Yeah.
eyes that don't live with you,
Yes, I
that are
don't
just
give
like, they
with
understand
me.
you go into this other room and then you don't become Willow for a while.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
something else. You're someone else. So do you have like that circle of friends that are kind of like a little bit away that you can email them something and they're like, yeah, you kind of went up your own ass
Like,
here, and I don't really, come back to us, reel it in to these like the
yes.
reality check friends or whatever.
Yes, I do, thankfully. Fortunately, I do. I do have some friends that are in charge of certain aspects of the book because I know that they're going to be better at that than actually telling me, hey, by the way, this sucks. And then I have some friends that I know if I give them a chapter and say, tell me exactly what you think about this, they're going to be honest with me and they're going to say, oh, this is horrible, or hey, I like this but I wonder if you could switch XYZ around. Of course, I do also have a fantastic wonderful author mentor who's been helping me so much, and she has been, I think, my best critic in the sense of she's super kind, and when she gives me criticism she's actually giving me examples of, hey, I didn't like this but you could fix it like blah 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 blah, so I can better understand the difference between what I did and what readers are probably looking for. And I'm so happy that I have this group of people because it has made my writing so much better. And it's made it easier for me to recognize as I continue to write the second book when I'm starting to get into that rambling, so to speak. Because I know for me, the worst thing that I do, which some people like, most readers don't, is I'm very wordy in my writing. I'm extremely descriptive, which can be good sometimes, but not all the time because the story still needs to go somewhere. You still need to have a flow, and the readers need to feel like they're moving through. And I didn't always do that, so I've been learning how to be succinct but still keep the immersion alive.
No, I get you. I get you. It's so hard to, I think, when you're first starting out to
Mhm.
know when to reel back the exposition. Like
Yes.
there are a lot of authors that I've read that and this is a bad example, I guess, but it's like translated to film, it's really exciting.
Hmm.
But a lot of Tom Clancy's stuff is so dry because I remember watching the movie The Hunt for Red
Hmm.
October, and like, oh, there's a whole series of books. Oh, I want to read these books.
Yeah.
And then I would start reading the books and just be like sitting there with like a cup of coffee at like 11, at
Yeah.
night, going like, you can't have 4 pages just describing
Yeah.
what company made the gun. that the
Yeah.
person's carrying, you're like, I don't care.
Yes.
It's
Like
like
the
drama
story
101. If you
is
have
great,
a gun at the beginning of the scene, it will be fired by the end of the scene.
yes.
I don't need to know like how it was manufactured. Like there, I'm
Yeah.
sure there are some people that are fascinated by that stuff, but and also the other side of that fact, like what I was saying, like very few people other than like a Quentin Tarantino or somebody
Mhm.
like that can
Mhm.
have characters just sit around and talk for
Yeah.
5, 10 pages because otherwise your author is like, weren't they on a quest?
Wasn't something happening here? Like,
Wasn't somebody in danger? Someone got
yeah.
captured under, threat of death, and they're
Yeah.
arguing over like what kind of sauce they're going to put on their food.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
This really
It's,
doesn't have that sense of urgency.
yeah.
So let me ask you this,
Mhm.
because we were just talking about Florida earlier. So
Yeah.
how has Florida, like as an environment or the community you live in, or even like if you've gone out into like a writer's community
Mhm.
itself, affected the book's creation?
I think it's affected the creation in several different ways. Um, Florida is where I met my author mentor, Miss Carissa DeLay. I'm going to give her a shout out, and she's going to love it. She's where, or this is where I met her. So that was a fantastic opportunity to have because I think being able to meet her and talk with her and talk through my experiences is certainly what inspired me to continue to write and really pursue this as something that I want to do, that I want to put my energy into. As far as the community goes, honestly, I live in an area that has a very heavy military community. And it's kind of wonderful because these are people from all walks of life. And so it's very open here, surprisingly. It's a very, very open community. People are very, very kind. And I found that there's actually a very large audience, especially in this area and kind of in general for science fiction fantasy. So that's been very nice just to connect with people and see again their different walks of life, which helped me create these characters that I'm hoping people can empathize with and see themselves in. But I also think that as far as writing communities go, I know there are some here in Florida. I haven't found them quite yet because I do still work a full-time job. So I'm putting whatever time I can towards writing, and the rest of it is working and making sure I can survive and put food on the table. Um, but I will say the online writing community is really hit or miss. I found a small community on Instagram with my little following. I love my little followers and people that I follow. It's a lot of creative minds. I love seeing their work. I love networking with them. It's really, really fantastic. But I've also joined a few writing Facebook groups, and they're either fantastic because everybody's here for each other, or they're really, really not because everybody wants to see whose book is better, whose idea is better. And they do a lot of the, well, if you're not traditionally published, you're not that cool, which is just not how it is anymore. So I think that I've been a lot happier building my own community, meeting people face to face, speaking with them, and networking with the people I find through my author Instagram than I haven't had as much fun trying to join groups because I've felt a little bit more judgment from those, unfortunately. But that's just my personal experience.
Okay, I can relate to that, having just moved here to South Carolina. But there's an old, I guess, salesman, I guess, saying, which was ABC always be closing. And that's like going back years and years. And I feel like for artists now, or at least like in the last 10 to 15 years,
Mhm.
the acronym we should be using is ABM, which is always be marketing.
Mhm.
Which it's
Oh my gosh,
interesting
yes.
you're yeah, it's interesting you're talking about that Facebook group thing because I've had experiences that with that too. And it's tough because like we ourselves are so excited about not what we have out that we're plugging, but also what we're working
Mhm.
on because I'm
Yeah.
sure you're the same way where it's like, yeah, you might have a book out, but that doesn't mean that like you just suddenly became a hollowed out husk and you have no
Yeah.
creativity. Like you just have it in you, this
Yes.
wellspring. So you're constantly doing stuff, constantly creating. And
Yeah.
so you may log into a chat or you may be going out to an event, a reading, an open mic, but then somebody will say something and spark something and you go, oh, well then, and then blah, 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 all
Yeah.
this stuff comes out of you, and they're like, yeah, well,
You're
can we
like,
just
but
start
wait.
with like, have you been here before? What
Yeah.
coffee do you recommend? Like, that is a lot.
Yes.
Because there's like
I'm
the
off.
oversharing, and then there's the imposter syndrome, and
Oh my God.
somewhere in the middle, that's who we really are. But
Yes.
okay. So let me relate that to this. So, have you locally performed at open mics or read any chapters in public at any readings or anything?
Not quite yet. I'm currently, since I'm about halfway through like the final edits of actually, having a manuscript that I can send off to be formatted, which, wow, that's kind of insane to say. Then I've been working on developing a marketing plan, so to speak. I've been in contact with some people who like this is their job is to market creatives. So that's been super helpful with me. I know at some point I want to attend events like that. I just want to ensure that I know a little bit of what I'm getting into. I've done a little bit of research ahead of time. I'm definitely one of those people like type A personality. I need to make sure that I'm prepared for everything that I do. So once I get the manuscript more finalized, and certainly once the book is out, I think I'm going to do a lot more of a push to attend local events because at that point, I will have something to give people. I'll have a product to say, yes, here's me as an author, here's my reading, but here's the actual book. If you liked what I was saying, here's something you can actually take with you and experience and immerse yourself into the world that I'm creating. And I might be going about that wrong. Maybe I should be attending events right now. I don't know. You live and you learn. This is my first debut novel. So once my second, third, and everything comes out, I'll have a little bit more experience. I'll have learned a little bit better and I'll know better at that point. But right now, I'm trying to develop a plan for myself moving forward. So once this book is out, I already know what I need to be doing as far as marketing and getting my name out there as an author.
Okay. Well, one thing I could offer, I know there's something in the last few years, and I totally get this, that when you are about to have a book come out, a lot of people are paranoid and they're kind of really wary of sharing something
Mhm.
or giving it away for free, so to speak,
Yeah.
before like, oh no, if I share too much of this for free or online or in person, will people want to go read the book?
Yeah.
Well, a workaround for that, which is something that I've done before a book comes out, is um, I might have something like imminently coming out in a couple months, and I'll
Mhm.
mention that. But then I might just go to an open mic and I'll share something that I'm working on like right now that won't even be in that book. And then I can get this awesome feedback from people like after, like, hey, what did you think of this? And or I
Oh,
like what you
okay.
read. Because it's like, well, you're not giving, it's like you're not giving away the whole farm or whatever expression
Yeah.
you want to say. Like
Yeah.
you're not like, it's like there's no danger of anything coming out from like animus or whatever. But
Yeah.
whatever you're working on now, that would be great because who's to say what exactly form I'll just say you're a little amoeba
Yeah.
glob of clay or Play-Doh
Exactly.
or whatever you want to call it that you're working on now is even going to be or be called or you're going to change characters. So
Oh,
you could even
absolutely.
go read something as like a couple of poems at an open mic that could just be dialogue
Hmm.
or something like that, or say like, hey,
Yeah.
I've got like this page. What do you guys think? I
Like,
got
yeah,
five
this page
minutes.
has nothing to do with anything right now, but it's just for fun.
Yeah, and then that would be a really good way for you to kind of
Yeah.
like get that instant feedback because I totally get it because I can tell that you're like I got this fever to share what I'm about to
You
release,
need to
but
tell
that
everyone.
paranoid of like no, I can't do it because I don't want
Yeah.
anybody, and I get it. You don't want people to
Yeah.
rip you off, this, that, and the
Yeah. Of
other. So,
course.
is that something maybe you might consider
Oh,
or?
absolutely. I didn't actually really think about that to be honest, because I do have some other projects that, like you said, are years down the line or like ideas. I'm like, oh, I need to run with that, but not right now because I have a trilogy to write first. So that actually sounds like, definitely not something that I had thought about before, but I can absolutely see how that could be really helpful. Just marketing yourself as an author, not even necessarily your
Of
work quite
this?
yet, but just yourself as a writer. Because
Yeah.
you, as a writer, you're your own brand. I know it's kind of weird to say, but you're your own brand, and your books are the products coming from your brand, especially as an independent author, which I've learned is anything besides being traditionally published. So go us.
And I haven't
But
myself, I years ago used to do this. I haven't done it for a long time because it's like, business cards are so passe and this and that. But it's something I'm going to probably pursue in the new year when I have some other projects coming out, and then I have like a couple of different things, and it's just a lot to tell somebody.
oh, yes.
And as somebody like me who does do readings and open mics, you think, oh, when I'm standing there at a microphone and I mention a website or like my Instagram handle,
Mhm.
oh, well, this is going to be recorded. This is going to be on their website or
Mhm.
their Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah,
Oh, they'll remember. If they want to reach out to me, they'll find
they
me.
won't
You know
remember.
what? With it, and this is really being generous. Within 3 days, they're gonna forget half of
Oh,
what you
yes.
did, your name, your 55 word Instagram handle.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have like letters and numbers and like hyphens, and I'm like, what?
You're like, yeah, I love this jumble of symbols. Great.
Yeah, no one's gonna remember. But yeah, so that's something to think about too. I know it's
Mhm.
old, it's passe, but people forget. You know what?
Yeah.
I got one, and you probably already thought of this. Bookmarks.
Yes, I actually have been working on trying to find a little artist that I can work with because like I have my little AI generated art, but it's really just a placeholder. I want to support an actual real life human artist. And I've been working on seeing if I could find one because I wanted to create portraits of the main characters that I can turn to bookmarks. So as hopefully the book gains more steam, people can be like, oh, I really like this certain character. I feel like I really vibe with this character. And they can have a bookmark that has that character. And then on the back, it has whatever information they need to know if they want to follow me as an author. There you go. It's all right there. So I have been thinking about that. Haven't put into motion quite yet, but the plans are there.
Very cool. And I was thinking, okay, you'll have all your contact info and all that stuff. So I guess this is pretty interesting. So if you could describe your writing routine, and would you say it's like a daily process, like you're really regimented, almost like a second job, or sometimes we really do have to wait for that wave of inspiration to take
Mhm.
us because nobody wants to sit there for like an hour and be like,
And just
it's
stare.
gonna happen. I swear to God, it's gonna happen today.
One day. So I'm a little bit of a mix. I stated to you earlier, and if you've seen any of my other interviews, I've said it on those too. Pretty sure I posted it on my Instagram as well. I do still work a full-time job so that I can still pursue my dream and survive and have a home. So,
Have to eat somehow. Yeah.
yeah, I know, right? I work in veterinary medicine as my day job, and I do it because I absolutely love and adore animals, but it does take up a lot of my time and it takes up a lot of my mental and emotional energy, which is fine. That's just what it does to all of us in veterinary medicine. So I try to, on lunch breaks or on days where it wasn't that bad at work, I try to do something that has to do with my writing. If I'm feeling inspired, I might edit or work on the second book. If I'm not feeling inspired, then I have a list of things. I'm like, well, this doesn't really require a whole lot of creativity. It's just things that need to get done. Whether it's let me work on my marketing plan, let me work on some ideas for Instagram posts or just really basic. Let me do some editing on my website if I have some things I have to put up, or cover design. Let me put together some ideas for cover design. Let me organize XYZ things, or the pronunciation guide because I write science fiction fantasy and you already know you're not gonna be able to pronounce anything in my book. So I'm going to have a pronunciation guide to help my readers. The only problem with that is I can make a pronunciation guide dumbed down nice and easy for all of us basic people. But when it comes to like the phonetic alphabet, I'm kind of lost. So we're learning. We're learning. We're working on that one.
But I would just say never lose that. Never stop being curious. Never stop wanting to learn. Because I feel like and it's so interesting because there's a movie about him coming out pretty soon. But I think it was Bob Dylan that said, if you want to have a long career as an artist, if you ever feel like you've arrived somewhere or you've figured it out, get rid of that thought or that feeling right
You have.
away because that's like death for an artist.
Yes.
So always I'm not saying like get into a car accident, like a fender bender, to have like some weird life experience, but I'm just saying like be open to it because
Oh,
I'll put
absolutely.
myself out here right now and just, and this is just like, you get in this little bubble and you don't think about things. And I've been
Yeah.
doing this podcast for about 4 years, but I remember, I think it was about 3 years ago, I had a woman on named Danielle Mitchell, and she runs a nonprofit out of LA called the Poetry
Mhm.
Lab. They have a website and all this stuff. But it was only through her. I think I'm gonna give her credit anyway. I think she was the first person. We were talking about marketing,
Mhm.
and she mentioned Canva, and I was like,
Oh yeah.
what? And she was like, "Oh, Eric, like you need to get on Canva. Pay for it, steal it, whatever you got to do, because start using that for your online flyers and stuff. Because if you're still using like Adobe or Photoshop,
Yeah.
like you are giving yourself migraines and stress and late
Yeah.
nights for no reason." And I don't even think Canva's been around for more than like 5 years tops,
No,
but it's
it's
just
ever. Yeah.
become this. Everybody uses it, and I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's like, but it's like you have to be open to it because
Mhm.
until somebody says this thing, and I could have been stupid and egotistical and been like, ah,
Like,
and
no.
then later I'd be like, can you email me that link?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. I know in this writing process, like I said, I've been networking with as many creative minds as I can. Of course, I'm a extroverted introvert, so to speak. So I definitely am very much a people person, but at the same time, I do the overthinking of, oh, they probably think I'm kind of stupid, or are they going to think I'm rude if I just like, hey, by the way, I'd like to talk to you. But I try to network as best I can with other creative minds because I do feel like there is so much that I can learn from them. I've gotten inspiration just from having regular conversations with random people. So I always try the best I can to be as open to other people's experiences and their perspectives, just because I never know when that one person's going to come talk to me and open up this wild opportunity I would have never gotten if I had been like, I don't want to be social right now.
Well, let me ask you this. So, have you been out like somewhere and you get an idea for something? Are you someone that you can jot down like just like a vague idea or something with background noise? Like if you're at a coffee shop or a diner, or do you absolutely have to have like a closed room, complete
Mhm.
silence? I mean, some people write to music.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, do you need distraction, or do you need silence like you're in a cave or something?
I so when it comes to just getting ideas, I honestly can get them anywhere. I can't even tell you how many times I've stopped and like, I need to write something in my phone real fast, and I'll go and write some idea that I randomly had. When it comes to actually the act of writing and getting into a story, that I usually have to be somewhere either quieter or where it's not rude to have headphones in. I'm definitely somebody, I have like my music playlist of songs that are specific to writing. I have playlists, it's insane the amount of playlists I have, but I have labeled playlists for specific scenes. So if I'm writing a fight scene, here are all the songs I need. If I'm writing something that's inspirational, here are the songs for that one. If I'm writing a romance scene, here are the songs for that one. I have songs that are labeled as themes for characters. Like, this is this character's theme. This is the song that represents this character. So the actual act of writing, I definitely have to have music, but getting inspiration is something that I can really get anywhere at any
Well,
time.
have you and your husband or any of your friends like been out? Like I said, it could be a diner, it could be a coffee shop, restaurant, whatever. And let's say, oh my God, it's a rainstorm, whatever. You have no signal, your phone battery dies, and you get an idea, and I call it like the lightning zygote thing, kind of lands in your brain, and like they can see it on your face when you just tune out of the conversation, and you all of a sudden you just are like, and then they start talking and you're like, and then you're like frantically looking around. You're like pulling on like the waiter's like shirt, like, I need a napkin and a pen
Yes.
now. And you're getting it, and then they're like, come here, and you're just like writing it down, and
Yes. Oh my
they're
God.
like daintily dropping the receipt because they're afraid you're gonna claw their face. But like,
So, oh
has
my
that
God.
happened where, and then like whoever you're with is just like, just whatever you
All
just
right. when you're done, let me know. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna get out of here and have you do your weird
Yes. Oh
thing.
my gosh. So my husband, I love him so much and he's so supportive and he's such a wonderful person. Um, but he's so funny. He is I like to we always joke that he's got undiagnosed ADHD because he's very much like everything all at once. We'll be in the middle of a conversation. He brings up something else and goes right back to the conversation. I'm still trying to figure out where this tangent came from. So for him, I'm so busy half the time trying to like figure out where a conversation is that when I'm with him, I usually don't like get inspiration, which no offense to him
You're like
whatsoever.
pause, pause,
I,
pause.
I
You're like,
can't.
I need to
Let me figure out where we're at right now.
connect these
Yes. But
tangents.
with
Yeah.
my friends, I have certain friends that I get together with who know I'm a writer, have read some of my work, are super into my work. And I get together with them specifically because we will sit there for hours just talking about what I haven't written yet. Just like going through the plots and the characters. And these are people who will help me figure out where I want to go with certain characters. Like I'll sit there and be like, I cannot figure out what to do with XYZ character. I want them to end up here. Right now they're at this spot. I don't know how to get there. And we'll talk for hours and they will help me figure out the path to get my character to where they need to be. Or I'll have certain friends who, yeah, they're like that. And we'll sit there and talk and I'll be like, you know, I just I just figured this out. And then they make me talk through it with them because I know if I don't sit there and I say what's on my mind, I don't actually verbalize, I will never remember. I have to verbalize what is going on in my head to actually remember what it is that we talked about. So there I've got friends like that. I've got friends who just are like, yeah, you're a writer. Cool. I don't read. And we just don't talk about it. So, you
Really not
know,
much of a reader,
yes, I've
maybe
got friends
TV
like
guide.
that. Yes. Love them
Do
very
you have
much.
like interactions with people that and there's nothing wrong with it. This is just the
Yeah.
world, the way the world is, but with people that, will just come out and tell you they're not creative. They don't understand the weird impulses and that the urges and like or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Like this was maybe like 10 years ago. I was somewhere, I think at like a rest stop diner or something. I was
Yeah.
traveling somewhere and I had like this notepad and I was sitting there and the next thing I know, like I must have been there for like an hour and just
Mhm.
and I was thinking I was like kind of like working on like this really vague thing for like a short story in my head.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about the scene and the people, the characters in the scene were talking to this weird alien race, and I was like, well, they wouldn't like speak English and this and that. And so I swear to God, it was just the timing of the thing. But the waitress came back over, and she walked up behind me, and I'm sitting there, and I'm going like, well, it would sound, and then all of a sudden I started going like.
You're like making the sounds.
Right.
No.
And then she comes up and she goes, oh, hey, sugar, are you still waiting for inspiration to strike? I'm like, well, no, because these people, they're talking to this alien race and they talk in pops and clicks. And she's like, oh, okay, that's
This is
great. Anyway, I'm just
cool.
going to slide that check over. Whenever you're good, you know what? You can just take it up to the register and all right, you'll have a great day. And she walked away and I could tell like she had like the largest eye roll in
Yeah.
human
Oh
history. And I was just like,
God.
wah, wah, wah.
Yes.
You had to have moments like that where you're trying to like you're just so excited and you're so into the process and you're in your own little world and you're doing it
Yes.
and you're trying to explain it or express it and it's not fully formed. Like I said, it's a sloppy pancake that got away or whatever you want to call it. And the other
Yes.
person's just like,
Oh, hey. Yes.
so
Oh
the
my goodness.
Nerf people have to communicate with the giant shoe insect that uses the
Yes.
propeller as a trans. I'm gonna go over here and boil some tea in China. I'll be back never.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. And I think it's happened to my husband more often than not because typically I'm usually really good at controlling the weird creative side of me whenever I'm like out in public and have to be a normal person. But especially when I'm at home in the middle of writing, we do this thing where um, we just have to be in the same room together. We don't have to be doing anything that's actually, has to do with each other. But as long as we're in the same room together, like we're content, we're happy, it's great. So usually he'll be playing his video games and like killing things, and I'm over here doing my writing and writing whatever it is. And I'll have my noise canceling headphones in and just like forget about the fact that I can't hear me, but everyone else can hear me. And the thing that I'm really bad about is either voicing dialogue to understand how someone's saying something or speaking the made up language so I can figure out how it's pronounced for my pronunciation guide. So I'm just like speaking gibberish, trying to understand how I'm going to pronounce things. And the other thing that I do, because I'm very visual, I don't know if you can tell by how much I talk with my hands, I'm very visual. And I sometimes have to act out the scene that I'm doing or that I'm writing so I can understand where people are
I
or
love
what they're
it.
doing. For example, fun fact, I was in theater and musical theater for years and years and years. And I did, in fact, learn a little bit of stage combat, like the fight combat with rapiers and whatnot. That was super fun. Great time. Bruised the heck out of my knees, but so worth it. So whenever I have these fight scenes, I will literally sit there and I'll kind of run through the different attacks and parries and stuff so
Please
I
tell
can
me you make
figure
the sound
out
effects with your mouth too.
there are moments. There are moments. There are. And it's literally just so I can figure out, okay, how are they standing? How would they move? If I was doing this, how am I going to describe this? What action am I making as they're going through? And I look like a weirdo, but I mean, I get it done and the description's accurate. So, like, it works. It's great.
Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. I can't remember where. I think it was on YouTube a couple years ago. I saw like a behind the scenes of like the making of one of the. I think it was the Star Wars prequels or something, and like it was like Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor were like practicing a scene or something with their lightsabers, and then the camera was like right behind Hayden Christensen. And he was like, "Wow, wow, wow."
If you don't make the
I
sound
know. And then
effects,
he
it's
was like, he
not
turned around and he
real.
was like, I, and then they were like, uh,
You don't make the
and then he
sound
was
effects if
like,
you're not
and
immersed.
then the camera guy was like, it's okay, man. Everybody makes the noise.
Don't do
Really?
it. You have to.
Everybody. Everybody makes the noise. Like, really? We added it in post, so you don't have to do it because
Oh
you
my
had
goodness.
dialogue.
Yeah. Oh
But
God.
okay, so going back to the Florida thing,
Yeah.
I know you are a fan of hikes. So do you go on hikes and trips to clear your mind, or sometimes are you working on something and you get frustrated? Maybe you'll throw on a coat, grab something to drink to go with the dogs or whatever, and just go get lost. Not really lost, but just like
I mean, I
lost in
would.
thought, and you're just like you just need to get out and get away, change the scenery,
Yes.
kind of thing.
Absolutely. I would be one to get lost. I have a horrible sense of direction, which is why I
You're
only
like,
go
how
places
did I end up
I
in
know.
Albuquerque?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, literally, literally. Um, but there are times now, again, I'm a very type A personality, so I do the best I can to have a plan set in place. I've got notebooks upon notebooks of notes and notes and notes of where plots are going. So usually if I have to get out and take a second, it's usually because in the throes of writing, a character has done something that I did not plan, but it makes sense at the time. Like I didn't plan for it, but I'm like, that actually makes more sense for this character to be doing or saying this or going on this path than what I had originally planned. I need to think this out because now I don't know what I'm doing. And so then I'll go and I'll walk the dogs, or I'll even just walk out to the backyard and have the cats go and chew grass while I'm sitting there thinking about, okay, what am I going to do now? Because I've changed this thing around. It makes sense. I love it. But I also have to figure out now that this has changed, how am I still going to get to where these characters need to be? Or do I want to change where they need to be? Do I want to change that theme and focus on something else instead? I think my best inspiration typically does come from if I am able to go on a hike, if I'm able to walk through a forest, which, you know, I love Florida. But the particular part of Florida I live in is very flat, so there's not a lot of hiking here. So typically if we're traveling and we can go hiking somewhere, I'll have some really great inspiration just doing, going around, climbing the rocks and acting like a hooligan. But where we are, it's usually just if I just walk my dogs and get out, throw on some headphones, listen to some different music, and just be on my own, be in my own mind. That usually helps the best if I have any kind of writer's block going on.
I almost feel like from what you're describing that if I were there, working on something like in that genre, I think that I would almost picture like a bird or a pterodactyl or some kind of something that is used for like surveillance for a character
Yes.
because the land is so flat,
Yeah.
so the characters would want to like because there's no mountain or whatever other than like the
Mhm.
ocean, there's no
Yeah.
discernible landmark. So the
Yeah.
characters would want to get like above it and like see really far. So in my mind
Mhm.
anyway, that's what I went to, but that's
Oh
just
yeah,
the way I
no.
think about stuff.
No, that I mean
Um,
that's honestly I take a lot of inspiration from the nature that's around us. Again, I do work in veterinary medicine. I grew up with both of my parents. My cat's currently trying to eat my hand, but I grew up both my parents are were veterinarians, so I grew up in a very scientific biology type, so to speak, household. And so a lot of my inspiration comes from that. So my characters, they are a different species. Majority of this book takes place on a whole other planet because why not? So they're a
why
whole
not?
different species, they're a whole different civilization. And a lot of their attributes have to do with where they're found on that planet. What kind of environment are they found in? And I'm telling you, as soon as I get this whole series out, I will write a nerd book. I'm going to write a whole entire nerd book that's going to go over
Hey, if it
the
worked for like
different.
Robert Jordan and
Yes,
Martin and all of
I
those
will be
people,
that person. I absolutely will. Just because
and then you're gonna be that
it makes
person that's
sense.
like, no, 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 no. On page 47 of the appendix of the second edition.
Yes, that will, it's sad, but that will be me. That will absolutely be me. I can see it.
Okay. Okay, so you've written the novel. So
Yes.
what are some other art forms you'd like to tackle that are not novel writing? Is there something else that you're just kind of like a burning desire? You're like, okay, even if I'm in the middle of XYZ, I'll pull myself out of the pocket and if this opportunity comes up, I would go for it.
Well, yes and no. Um, I mean, my main creative mind goes straight to writing. Is he still?
Oh yeah, you have a spider cat right there up up in the
That's kind of
bookshelf.
dangerous, actually. There we go. Um, all right, buddy. Great times. I
Cat's
feel like
like,
my
look, I'm the star.
oh that's Tofu. He was a star of one of the other podcasts I did. He's Tofu. I'm pretty sure at some point he's gonna have his own occult following. It's fine. But as far as other creative interests, like I said, I mainly focus on writing, but I have to say, I'm no artist myself, honestly. I think it would be fun to learn a little bit more about some more basic art forms like basic sketches or even just honestly creating maps because I
Okay,
have to
yeah.
have a map for my own novel. Again, it's science fiction fantasy. If are you really a science fiction fantasy person? If you don't flip back and forth and look at the maps, you can figure out where you're here. Like that's what we do. So I think it would be interesting and helpful for myself to learn a little bit more about the art of map making, specifically when it comes to these science fiction fantasy made up worlds. And again, mostly because that is again, I'm not an artist, but I could sketch. I could be somebody that could
You
sketch.
are an artist, you just haven't been able to spend that much time working on it.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm a writer and I could draw slightly. Like if I draw, you can tell you could look at it and say, yeah, that is reminiscent of whatever it is you're trying to draw.
Just tell your
But
husband that he can't be putting you down and then putting the maps on the fridge next to the macaroni art.
yeah, I'll
So
be like, sorry, don't do that.
you're like, don't be a dick. Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I'm sure at some point you've wanted to learn how to play an instrument. You've wanted to maybe get on a stage somewhere. You've
That's
wanted to
true.
maybe think
Yeah.
about turning a short story into a short film. There's a whole market for that. So
Yeah.
there's just a whole wide world out there, and I think you could easily get your foot in any of those worlds.
Yeah.
So, do you have any experiences yourself, maybe not with your own work, of going to book festivals and kind of like book fairs, book festivals?
Mhm.
And what have you kind of gleaned when you go there and you're like, okay,
Mhm.
so when my stuff hits
Yeah.
the ground running, I want to I like what she did. I like what
Yeah.
he did. I like this presentation. I like the way this table was set up. I like this visual stuff, or
Yeah.
this was too busy of
Mhm.
whatever, to their backdrop too busy, too many words.
Yes.
So have you picked up some stuff that you've seen, not with
Yeah.
your own stuff, but your own experience, like pros and cons that you're going
Yeah.
to apply?
Yeah. So I've kind of figured out my style, so to speak. I definitely have seen displays that are just too much. Like they tried a little too hard, which is okay. It's a learning curve. That's fine. But then I've also seen the displays where it's just the book and that's it. And I'm like, you know, I could walk right by this and not realize I walked right by it. So I think I like to have a little bit of a balance between something that's very clean, but also has a lot to offer. Like I want to draw somebody in because there's more to look at than just the book. And I like the idea myself of collaborating with local artists because I am a huge believer in promoting small businesses and small creatives. I love that. That's, I think, my favorite thing. My parents were small business owners. So I went to a lot of these fairs and stuff with my mom when she was promoting her own business and saw that having something more than just, yep, here's my business is what drew people in
Yeah.
to talk with you. So I feel as if as an author, when I'm able to get out there and say, here's my book, obviously I'm going to have my book, but I also want to have different products that have to do with the series, whether it's bookmarks we talked about, or here's some small prints of the characters if you wanted to have it, or a small print of the map if you wanted to have that, if that's kind of something you'd like to have as your art piece. Or there's also beadwork that has something to do with the culture in my novel. It's sort of a primitive culture, well, also being very advanced. It's kind of a mix of the two. Like they're still very in touch with their cultural roots, but they also have the technology to be advanced if they choose to be so. So there's things like beadwork, tattoos, different pieces of jewelry that have to do with the different characters and with that culture that I could set out as, well, this does have to do with the book, but also if you're just really into beadwork, if you're just really into artwork, here you go. There's something for that too. So I want to be able to have that on offer so people's eyes are drawn to more than just, here's a book. There's a
Yeah,
lot
here's a
more.
book and a bookmark, and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, how is this
Like,
different than the library?
great. Yeah.
So, well, I'll put this to you too, because this is something that when I've gone to book festivals and book fairs, I feel like there's really no gray area middle ground that I've
Mhm.
witnessed. There seems to be like people that are very meek and kind of almost like nebbish and just kind of
Yeah.
like, they're maybe they're at a table with two other authors and they have that little, book stand or something and they're like this and then they're just like if maybe on the back of the book there's a nice blurb that my aunt wrote for me and sometimes I
Mhm.
do knitting on Thursdays in the rain and you're like, oh, okay. But then there's the other people that
Yeah.
are way worse, which I call
Oh
them
my
like
goodness. Yes.
the hard sell, which
Mhm.
is, they're the ones that have the giant banners, and it's almost like they have their own personal Comic-Con, and
Yes.
they have
There's
people
so
dressed
much.
up in costumes holding like plastic
Yeah.
swords or whatever, and you're just like, whoa. And then it's
Wow.
like, not that I don't want them to be excited and proud of their work, but it's literally like they have people going around in costume, like with the bookmarks or the business cards that aren't even the author. And
Yeah.
it's literally like, I remember one time I had somebody kind of like grab onto my shirt at one point, and the woman, it wasn't even the author, but this woman's like, you didn't even stop at our table. And to me, it was like, the personal space thing was okay, that was bad
Yeah.
enough.
A little
But
much.
the
Yeah.
attitude wasn't even like, hey, let me tell you about this interesting book or collection or whatever. Here's a QR code on the on the bookmark or whatever. It wasn't even that.
Yeah.
It like the whole undercurrent, and maybe you've seen this, is she was saying book and this, but the whole undercurrent that I got out of it was, I have a car payment. You know what I mean? Like she didn't say
Yes.
that, but it was kind of like in your face of like, you have to stop. Like you don't understand. And it's like, no, I
Yeah.
understand,
And
but like
like, great, but
pump the brakes.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree honestly. And again, that's why I'm doing what I can to kind of learn about marketing now. Mostly because I want to make sure that I have a plan for what is actually going to get people to read my book and be interested in me as an author. But I also don't want to try too hard because I do agree. I feel like you can tell. You can tell when somebody is just, what are you, why?
It's your co-star.
I know.
He's just like,
He's
look,
he's way
if
too
you're not
much.
going to pay attention to me, maybe America will.
Tofu, this is not a smart decision. Anywho,
It is what it is. So,
it is. But yeah,
so as we've been rapping for a while, we'll wrap it up here, I guess.
sorry.
So, I guess let the folks know what's coming up next for you and where can they find your work online and
Yeah,
reach out to you if they want.
absolutely. So right now, we're still figuring out a little bit of the social media thing because I feel like I'm a young enough person that I should understand social media. Yeah, I don't. So I've got my Instagram at Willow Grace underscore writes, which I'm sure you're gonna be linking at the bottom. That's the best way to keep up to date with me. I post on there as regularly as I can. I try to answer any direct messages if I can, as quickly as I can. Other than that, I've also got my website, which I believe is wgauthor.com, I think. Willow G Author,
We'll
something
run
like
with that.
that. Yeah, I think it's Willow G Author, I believe,
I
because I
believe
was trying
so,
to figure out
yeah.
the domain and things were taken, and I was like, this is great. It's something like that. It'll probably also be linked somewhere for you guys to find, but that's another way to keep up to date with me. Keep up with my blog. It's on there, pen in hand, cat and lap blog. It's the cat that's usually in the lap, so he inspired the name. And then I think you can sign up for email newsletters and such on there as well. I believe that my email is on there at the very bottom of the page. So if you prefer to correspond through email, that is on there. It's the best way to get in contact with me and keep up to date on all this stuff. And it's also where if I figure out social media and end up in other places, I will put them on there.
I think that is fantastic. It's easy to find, like you said, on the social media. I will recommend that if you do a couple of reels with tofu, I think people that might draw in some people too,
Oh,
just
I think
because
so too. He's such a good star.
he's
He's
like
such
what we
a
call,
nerd.
he's that total ham. Yeah.
I know. And he also is the cat where if I try to contain him, I
He's
won't
just
have
like,
carpet anymore. Oh my goodness, he just goes crazy. If I try to put him in a room by himself so he doesn't do this, my
I love
carpet
it
is
though. People are
destroyed.
gonna remember, people are gonna watch this and
I
they're gonna
know.
like, yeah, 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 she writes books,
I'd be
but
like, yeah, it's a
that
lady with a
cat,
cat. It's a lady with a, I told
it'll be
you.
your new baby Yoda,
Yeah,
Grogu,
I
you know,
told
it'll
you
be
he's gonna have his own occult following it. So I know he is. I'm gonna have to
his
make
own
him
Instagram account. And
and
he's out.
gone.
He's like, peace out. I did
He's
what I
like, of
came. I came, I saw, I conquered. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. You were
course.
delightful as I knew you would be.
Thank you.
And just have a great rest of your day. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.